Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Bava Kamma daf Pei Tet. We are at the top of Pei Tet Amud Aleph. And yesterday we offered the story of Reb Shmuel Bar Abba. As his mother attempted to give Reb Shmuel Bar Abba Nichse Malog property. Unfortunately, and again, Nichse Malog property is property that a wife brings into a marriage or comes to her during the course of the marriage, and that property is property that the husband has a right to the profits associated with it, what's known as the fruit, because of course we think about it in a real property sense, and it's easiest to think about it from that perspective. That the fruit of the property, meaning what grows on the property, goes to the husband, while the underlying property remains the property of the wife. And the wife will benefit from any appreciation, suffer from any depreciation of the property's value, if in fact they were to get divorced or the husband were to die. But if the wife dies first, then the husband is going to inherit all of the property. And so as a result, that's an important element of the nature of the property. And the question that we're discussing, because here, Shmuel Bar Abba's mother attempted to give her son this Nichse Malog property, but the problem is that she predeceased her husband. And so the husband says, no, I'm supposed to get it. And the question is, what's the order? Do we say that the wife was able to transfer the underlying property, and so as a result, when the husband eventually dies, then the son will get the fruit and the property? Or do we say, no, she's not able to transfer the underlying property, even though she owns it, even though she has the right to it eventually, because we say the fruit of the property is equivalent to the underlying ownership, and the husband has that. So as a result, it's really as if it's the husband's property. And so as a result, and that's the Rabbi Yochanan's view, and therefore you wouldn't be able to give it. On the other hand, Shmuel Bar Reish Lakish, Rishim ben Lakish, says that no, it's not considered this Nichse Milog property, that the wife has property interest. It is considered hers, and so she would ordinarily be able to transfer it. And we also discussed yesterday, again, the concept of Nichson Son Barzel. That's property that the wife brings into the marriage that the husband guarantees will not lose value during the marriage. Unlike the value of Nichse Malog, the value of Nichse Son Barzel is listed in the wife's ketubah, because we need to say in the wife's ketubah exactly how much she's entitled to if they were to get divorced or something else were to happen, or the husband were to die. So we closed yesterday by attempting to show a Tanaic source that reflects the existence of Takanas Usha. Again, Takanas Usha was important because it says that if a wife sells her Nichse Malog property, even though we're going to agree with Reish Lakish that ordinarily that level of property ownership is sufficient to sell something, we're going to say that Takanas Usha says the husband has the right to recoup that property if the wife predeceases him. And so as a result, that's why in the end we effectively conclude that even though Rav Shmuel Bar Abba's mother tried to give him the property, his father, or possibly stepfather, who also happened to be named Rabbi Abba, turns out that he's going to be able to get the property from Rav Shmuel Bar Abba, and he's the one who's going to take it. And so, but again, what we concluded with yesterday was an effort to try and find a source from the time of the Tanaim that reflects the existence of Takanas Usha. And we cited a brisa that said that if false witnesses attempted to say that a husband had divorced his wife and paid the ketubah, so again, what they've tried to do is prevent the wife from being able to receive her ketubah if, in fact, they were to divorce. And it turns out that they're, in fact, still married. And, of course, again, these witnesses become zomim because two other witnesses come and say that they were with them at the time that they said that they testified that, in fact, the husband had given the get. So they would owe the wife the risk-adjusted value of the ketubah, not the full value of the ketubah, but the risk-adjusted value. So because she's only going to get the ketubah if they divorce or the husband dies first. So you have to factor in the risk that what happens if she dies first. So, and we said that maybe that would suggest that there must be some kind of takanas usha that's being implied in this brisa, and Abaye answered, no, it doesn't, because the property that's in the ketubah that she might be able to sell is nichsei tzon barzel, and nobody ever says that you can sell nichsei tzon barzel, because the only thing she gets is basically a credit that the husband owes her. The husband really can do whatever he wants with the property in the meantime. It really is fully his because he just committed to pay her back the value of the property. So before attempting to cite a second Tanaic source for Takanas Usha, which actually is going to be our Mishnah, and this actually explains, yesterday I said I couldn't understand why the Gemara was citing this case. Well, it's because I missed, as I was preparing for today, I had missed the fact that we cite our Mishnah. And so we're going to cite our Mishnah as a potential source for Takanas Usha, and that again explains why this Gemara is located here. But before we do that, we're going to turn to discuss a wife selling her ketubah. And the question is, does she get to keep it, or meaning if she's going to sell it for a risk-adjusted value, does she get to keep it, or does the fact that anything that comes to the wife go to the husband mean that the husband gets to keep it? So Abaye is going to suggest that the brisa that we just saw suggests that maybe she would get to keep it. Must be that she gets to keep it. So Amar Abaye, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines down on Pei Tet Amud Aleph. Second word on the line. Amar Abaye Tovas Hana Hoava Asalidan. Since she is the implication of what we've just said, that since since we're discussing Ahoa Ba'asali Yadan, meaning that since it came to our hand to discuss this, because you raised this potential brisa, Rav Idi Bar Avin raised the brisa at the end of yesterday, trying to say that it proved Takanas Usha. Nema Bamilsa. Let's learn something about it. Tovas Hana Liisha Havya. That when the amount that she is entitled to, the discounted value of that amount that she could sell her ketubah for, that would belong to the wife if she were to sell it. Because if you were to say that it actually belongs to the husband, so limrula edim, let the witnesses who have been determined to be false witnesses tell her, my afsidinach, what have we caused you to lose? Because at the end of the day, Eidim Zomimim are only liable to the extent that they would have caused a loss for somebody. But in fact, in this situation, they didn't cause her a loss at all yet, because her loss is only something in the future that may never even happen. And so if in fact she cannot keep the proceeds of selling her ketubah now, then they haven't really caused her any loss. And Ihabas Mizavnas Latovas Hana, because even if you had sold it for its discounted value for the amount that it's worth to you now, Baal have a shakamina, your husband would have taken it from you. So as a result, it's all really the husband's. We haven't done anything to you. So doesn't that show that it must be that the wife would be able to retain it? After all, because this Baraisa told us that the Adam Zomimim would have to pay the wife for the loss. So that shows that the wife would have gotten it if she sold it. So Amar Rav Shalman, no, it's not a definitive proof. Mishum de'ika revach besa. Maybe you could say, in fact, let's take a look at Rashi here. Rashi is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 10 lines up from the bottom of the lines in Rashi. Revach besa. Afilu im habal notlan. Even if the husband were to take the proceeds of the sale, Noach leisha lamochra b'chayeha. It could be that it is to the value of the woman to sell it while she's alive and while she's married to her husband. Because maybe at the moment her house is not, her husband isn't doing well financially, and so as a result, this is an asset of the marriage. And so even though it might not actually go to her directly, she would have to transfer the proceeds to her husband. One could imagine a situation where it would be worth her to do it, and she would have some indirect benefit. And so it could be that the reason that the Adam Zomimim are liable is because of this indirect benefit, not necessarily the direct benefit. Okay, so and again, so that way the house has additional profits that can be used during her lifetime. So that shows that the brisa is not a definitive proof to Abaye's statement. Nonetheless, Amarava Hilchos Atobas Hanal Isha, that in fact the halacha is according to Rava, as he states it, and indeed it seems that we paskin that way, that the wife gets the profit. The Eina Baal Ochel Peiros, and interestingly enough, the husband doesn't even eat the peiros. Now, what does that mean? Let's take a look at Rashi. It's 7 lines up. The Eina Baal Ochel Peiros Lo Amrinan Yikach Behen Karka V'hu Ochel Peiros. We don't say that you should buy property with it, with the proceeds, meaning that here this wife is going to receive a penalty payment. And so as a result, one might have thought that like other property that she brings into the marriage, maybe she needs to convert it into real property. And that way it's real property that the husband can benefit from the fruit of it. And she'll have the real property as an asset if they get divorced or if the husband were to die. But in the meantime, the husband could eat the fruit. And we don't say that. So it's really hers, unlike other property that she might bring into the marriage. My time, what is the reason? Because we say that only the fruit of the nichse malog property does the husband get. The fruit of the fruit the husband does not get. Now, this is a little bit of a confusing statement because on a literal sense, it's not actually true. Because, for example, if the wife brings in an apple orchard, and now there are apples that grow on that orchard, so the apples, of course, go to the husband. Those are the fruit. If the husband takes some of those apples and takes the seeds out of those apples and plants those apples in his own field, and then those apple seeds grow into apple trees and grow new fruit, you might have thought to call that the fruit of the fruit. But that is not what we're talking about. That fruit does, in fact, belong to the husband. So it's a little confusing. The fruit of the fruit that we're talking about is where something comes from elsewhere as a result of the fruit. So here, as a result of the property. So here, what is this benefit? This is the benefit that's associated with her ketubah rights. Those ketubah rights that she has, the rights that she has to the value of the property, that is the fruit of the fruit, because essentially it's not direct, it's indirect. And so as a result, we're going to call that the fruit of the fruit, and that's what she gets to keep. She does not have to give that to her husband.
What's an example?
Another example of that would be if, in fact, a person were to steal. She owns a cow, and somebody comes and steals that cow, and so as a result, now there's a double payment, and it may be even a quadruple, or I guess it's a cow, so it's a quintuple payment. So as a result, so the principal of that payment will go to the husband, because the husband has the right to replace the cow and to get the benefit of that cow. But what about the multiple payments? Who gets the benefit of those multiple payments? That would be another example, I believe, of peirid de peira, of fruit of the fruit, that she would get, and not the husband. So that's another kind of situation. Again, similar to this, it's essentially, again, a penalty payment that's coming from another source that relates to her property. So she is going to be the one to get it. Again, if it makes up the exact property, the husband gets it because he's going to get it while she's alive. But when you get the extra something, and so that's the double or the quadruple or the quintuple payment, so then she would get that. So that's another example of where we would say payra de payra lo takino be rabana. Okay, so now we finally get back to and explain why we had this whole case of um, um, oh gosh, the whole case of Rav Shmuel Bar Abba. Because we had this whole case here, because we're going to now again raise the case because we wanted to raise the takanas usha, because that's why Rav Shmuel Bar Abba does not get to keep the property. It ends up going to his father / stepfather Rabbi Abba, but now we're going to use the fact that we have this enactment. Doesn't that show, or can we prove that enactment exists based on our own Mishnah? So let's take a look. Ki asa Rav Papa v'Harav Huna brei de Rav Yoshua mibei Rav. So Rav Papa and Rav Huna came from the yeshiva of Rav, and Amri Tanina Takanas Usha. We seem to have a Mishnah that teaches us Takanas Usha, and it's our Mishnah. Ha'ebed ba'isha pegia san ra'ah. It's bad for you to bang into a woman or a slave, because hachova behen chayev, one who wounds them is going to be liable. Behem shechavlu ba'acherim peturin, and yet if they do something to somebody else, they're going to be exempt. And if you tell me, 1 second, there's no such thing as a takanas usha, or at least there wasn't at the time of this Mishnah. So tezabin nichse melog v'titenle. Why not let her sell her malog property and give the proceeds to her husband? So 1 second, well, 1 second, even if you were to say that there is takanas lo matzi mezabne legamri, even if she can't sell it completely, right? She can still sell it on a conditional basis, meaning on the conditional basis that the husband dies first or the husband divorces her. So it would certainly seem to be that she would be able to sell something. So there is some property that she has a right to sell. And so doesn't that show so isn't this Mishnah a problem more broadly? So Ella de our Mishnah must be talking about where the woman doesn't have any property to sell. So hachinami de, and so even if we were to say that there was no takanas usha, we could say that the Mishnah is talking about where she doesn't have the necessary property to sell. So bottom line is that our Mishnah does not, in fact, prove the case. Utizabin, hello, welcome. Utizabin ksubasa betovas hana betitenla. 1 second. Why not let her sell her whole ketubah? Meaning, you've referenced that she can't sell the malog property, but what about the ketubah? We've just shown that a ketubah has a discounted value. So Hamani Rebbe Meir, maybe our Mishnah is Rebbe Meir. And indeed, of course, if it's a Stam Mishnah, it makes sense to cite it as Rebbe Meir. But in any event, it's why would it be Rebbe Meir? To Amr, because he's the one who says, Asr Lola Adam, es ishto afilu sha'achas below ksuba. It is prohibited to be married to a woman even for a minute, even for a moment, without a ketubah. So the time of my, well, 1 second, and so as a result, that would be the reason why Rebbe Meir would not say that the woman should just sell her ketubah, and the proceeds of the ketubah would be the way that she would pay for the damage that she did if she were to bang into somebody. But time of mine. Now you wanted to say that maybe it's Rebbe Meir, and therefore that's why he doesn't allow the sale of the ketubah. But what is the reason that Rebbe Meir doesn't want somebody to not have a ketubah? Kadei shelo tehei kala be'einav lahotziyah hachad lo megarishla. But so here the reason is because he doesn't want it to be easy for the husband to divorce his wife. But here he's not going to divorce her, because the imagarishla asu hanach desavne gavu ksuba samine. He's still going to owe the ksuba money. So the point is that if in fact we were to allow her to sell the ketubah, it wouldn't actually affect the likelihood of divorce, because the husband, whether or not he gives the money to the wife, is irrelevant. The point is that if he were to divorce her, he would have to pay somebody the money. Elatovas hana mili ninu. So maybe we could say that the issue is the following: that this discounted value, the value of the ksuba, is just words. Umili lo mishtabde, and we don't allow a lien against words, meaning we won't say that look, there's a victim here, right? The person that she banged into, she accidentally was getting up from a chair, and she banged into somebody's chin, and he knocked him out, and he's out, and he's got a concussion, and he's out of work for a week. So he needs to get paid his pain, and his unemployment, and all these things. So maybe we should say that that victim, Victor the victim, has a claim, has a lien on her ketubah. And so the answer is that, well, maybe this is going according to a view that says, well, look, a ketubah is just words. It's just a commitment for the future, and words don't have a mortgage value. So alama lo, why not? Mili de mizdavne b'dinarininu. Why shouldn't they? After all, she can sell it. So elamish. So we're going to reject that answer. We're not going to say it's because of words. Elamishum de Shmuel, but rather it's because of Shmuel's teaching. To Amar Shmuel, hamocher shtar chov lechabeiro v'chazar umachalo. If I lend money to Mark, and so Mark owes me $100. Now I have an IOU that Mark wrote me, and I sell it to Moshe, and Moshe gives me, because there's maybe some risk associated with collecting it, he gives me $75 for it. Well, even though he's paid for it, and now he's holding the IOU from Mark, if I go and try and forgive Mark the loan that I lent to Mark, machal, it's forgiven. And so as a result, all of a sudden, the IOU that Moshe owns is worth nothing. Va'afilu yorish mochel. Not only can I waive it, but even, God willing, Admeya Esrim, after I pass, and my children have the right to cancel the IOU that Mark owes to Moshe now that I sold it to him. And so as a result, of course, the woman is going to and so take a look at Rashi, last Rashi on the dot, 4 lines up. Hilkach I amrinan la tizabin mafsidan lay lulokeach. If we say to a woman that she needs to sell her ketubah in order to pay the damage to Victor the victim, the buyer of this is going to get nothing, because in the end she is going to forgive the amount that the ketubah is owed. Labal because we're forcing her to sell it against her will. So she has no affection for the person who buys the ketubah. She won't care that she's getting she's causing him to lose out on all of that money. So as a result, that's why we won't make her do that. So Amri Zabuni Zabim V'titin Lay. Well, 1 second, let her sell the ketubah. The imachla lay legabi baal timchala. So 1 second, well, who knows? Well, so whatever so let the buyer beware. The buyer knows that she's likely to forgive it, but she'll, maybe somebody will give her a few pennies, and the few pennies will still at least help Victor, the victim, a little bit towards the damage that he's suffered. So Amri kol legabi baal vade machlahu lay. That in the end, the issue is that she's definitely going to be forgive the amount that her husband owes, because anything with respect to her husband, a wife is almost always going to forgive. And we don't want somebody to lose money as a result, because even though it's very, very likely, maybe somebody will pay a few pennies and he'll still end up losing those few pennies. Maybe let's just have her transfer the ketubah directly to the person who she injured, to Victor the victim. And as we turn to pay tenem a bet, well, look, at least Victor, the victim, doesn't lose anything if, in fact, the husband suffers, the wife forgives the husband, because he's getting at least whatever the ketubah is worth, and it's worth more than, it's at least worth zero. So it's not going to cost him any money. So dahashanami lo midi kayavalei, because even if so, she's not giving him anything. So kola gabi bal vade machla ba'atruche be dina b'kadei lo matrichinan. No, the issue is that at the end of the day, she's going to give him nothing, and we're not going to cause the court to go to trouble of having a whole case and end up getting nothing. So as a result, that is why we are not going to force a woman to sell her ketubah in order to pay the debt. Okay, so so now the question is, Ella hadatanya v'chein hi shechavla bevala. Well, one second. What about the fact that if the woman hurts her husband? Because we say in a brisa that if a woman hurts her husband, then she also doesn't lo hefsida b'ktubata. She also does not lose her ketubah. Amai, why not? Tizabinei nahale b'ktubata lebalat lebala b'tovas hana b'hakavala. Let her sell it to some third party, and or at least and her give her the discounted amount to the husband for the injury. Again, if the husband forgives, if she forgives the ksuba, again, if she's selling the ketubah to her husband, so then there's no loss. Nobody loses anything. And the husband, so ha vade Rebbe Meir he. So no, then we can say that that brisa is going to be according to Rebbe Meir. The Amar Asula Adam Shiyashhe as Ishto Afilo Shakas below Ksuba. Because again, he says, Rebbe Meir says that your wife can't, a man can't be married to his wife even a minute without a Ktuba. The time of my, now what's the reasoning of that? It's so that the wife shouldn't be easy to divorce. But one second, here the husband would have an easy chance to divorce her, because because even though the wife doesn't owe the money now, if in fact they were to get divorced and she would have her own property, now all of a sudden she is able to pay the damages, and she would be liable for those damages. So so he here too, he can divorce her and collect the ksuba from for his injury. So effectively, the net is that there's no value in the ketubah any longer. So let's just give an example, monetary example. So Harry, the husband, is injured by Wilma, the wife, and so and he has a ketubah, and he's injured for $1,000, and the ketubah is worth $1,000. So it's as if he were to divorce her right now, he would be able to give her the ketubah the $1,000, and then he'd be able to make a claim against the $1,000 for his injury. So in the end, it's as if he doesn't owe her anything to divorce her. So what kind of protection is that kind of divorce? So why not just let her sell it while they're married? So so the situation, what about if there's a large ksuba? The mishum hahu porta, because if the ksuba is actually a large amount, so now instead of being $1,000, it's $100,000. So mishum hu porta lo mafid tova. He's not going to divorce her to get the $1,000 when he owes her $100,000. Well, ksuba do raisa. One second, but if the ksuba is greater than what's required from the Torah, nokma ksuba do raisa. The idak tizavna nihale bechavlale. Why not let her sell the extra proceeds from the ketubah? So if in fact a minimum ksuba is worth $1,000, and she's and that's what he owes her, that's what she owes him, but the ksuba is actually worth $100,000. So let her sell the extra part of the ksuba, the $99,000 value of the ksuba, use that to pay the husband, and then we'll set up a ksuba that's for the value of the remainder. And that way he still will have a ksuba that's associated with her. So kagon de lo nefisha ksuba sam ksuba del raisa. Maybe we're dealing with a situation where the ksuba is not, where the value of the ksuba is not greater than the biblical ksuba. The havi chavale arba zuze. So, for example, a biblical ksuba is worth 100 zuz, but maybe the injury is only worth 4 zuz. So, to mishum arba zuze lo mafsid esrim chamisha. You're not going to lose 25 slim or 100 zuz just to gain 4 zuz. So again, like our example, the husband isn't going to divorce her for when his damage is relatively minor. He's not going to divorce her in order to get the damage payment. And she can't sell her ketubah because there's no extra value in the ketubah, and she needs to have a ketubah at all times. So
So how do we say earlier where you brought Rashi that it's possible to sell the ketubah for the benefit of the house, that there is a revach there that they could use so that seems to be a contradiction here with what
No, you're absolutely right to raise it. Well, first of all, that Rashi was on Ahava Amina, and we did not actually conclude that way. But even according to where we are at the moment, if in fact the ketubah does have excess value in it, meaning if the ketubah is worth more than the minimum biblical or required amount, then she would be able to sell that excess piece. She would be able to sell the excess piece and be left with just the minimal ksuba. It's only when the ksuba is equal to the minimal value of a ksuba, then she's not able to sell it according to Rebbe Meir. Remember, we actually don't fully paskin. We're worried about Rebbe Meir, but we actually don't fully paskin like Rebbe Meir. A couple, even if they, God forbid, were to lose their debt, lose their ksuba, the woman was to lose the ksuba, they are still allowed to remain married. They should replace the ksuba as soon as possible, but they are still allowed to remain married. And so as a result, we don't actually paskin like Rabbi Meir, but again, according to Rabbi Meir, you would not be able to sell it only if it's the minimum value. And so when Rashi was saying earlier, it could be a situation where we had greater value in the ksuba. So now that we've explained that this case, that when even the husband can't collect from his own wife and diminish the value of the ksuba, and we've set up the case as being involving a minimal value ksuba. So Ela Hadatanya, but 1 second, we have the end of the brisa, which says the following: Kashem shalom timkor behi tachtav, that when just as she cannot sell the ksuba when she is married to the husband, kach lo tafsid behi tachtav. She also can't lose the ketubah. She can't give up the ketubah. She can't forfeit the ketubah while she's married to him. But 1 second, we've just found a way that she could potentially forfeit some of the ketubah. What's the case? If her ketubah is worth more than the biblical amount. So Amar Rava, Seifa Asan leketubas banin dichrin. Actually, that last line is telling us about something that is not the main aspect of the ketubah. It's the ketubah banin dichrin, the ketubah of male children. And Rashi tells us what this is, but it's a long Rashi, so we're not going to go through the entire thing. But let's do it outside. What Rashi tells us is that that as part of the ketubah, a wife is subject to the following commitment from her husband: that if she predeceases her husband and she was entitled to $100,000 from the ketubah, her children will be entitled to that $100,000 before dividing the rest of the husband's estate when the husband eventually passes. So again, this is a manner in which a man with 2 wives can assure each wife that the money that she brings into the marriage will go to her children and will not be inherited by the husband's children with another wife. And so that's what the Tubat Banin Dikran is. V'hachiktani. And now we go back into the Gemara. We're in the middle of the line right beneath the line opposite the Tosos Kagon de lo Nefisha, v'hakiktani. And this is what the Brisa is teaching us. Just as when a woman sells her ketubah to others, she is not going to lose the ketubah of the male children. That the children will continue to have this right if she predeceases, right? Because remember that when she sells her ketubah, which again, according we're allowing to happen, exactly as Ken pointed out, we're allowing a wife to sell her ketubah, but it's a contingent sale because if she dies first, the purchaser gets nothing. And yet, even if she sells, if she dies first, her children will still retain this ketubas b'nindifferent right, the right to get the assets that she was entitled to under the ksuba. And my timer, what's the reason? Because Zuzehu Ansua, she's selling. The only reason a wife will ever sell her ketubah is because of financial distress. So it was financial distress that made her sell. She is not going to deprive her children of any financial ability post her death. That's not. She's never going to sell that asset. So kach mocheres ksubas alabala lo hefsida ksubas but indifferent. Similarly, if she were to sell her ketubah to her husband, if she were to again essentially forgive her ketubah to her husband, she's not going to give this up. My taima zuzehu ansua, because it's all a forced sale. We're not going to, we're not going to limit her ability to do that. And so as a result, we've now explained everything, and we've shown again that in fact our Mishnah and these various brises do not in fact prove that Takanas Usha was a widely accepted thing at the time of the Tanaim.
If she sells the ketubah, then how do her sons, B'nai Nichrin, get the money? Do they have to go to the person to whom she sold it and state, I want the money for my mother's ketubah?
Oh, excellent question. So two things. The question is who dies first? If in fact the husband dies first.
No, she dies.
No. But let's go through both situations. So let's go do the first. She died. If she dies, then the purchaser of her ketubah gets nothing. If she dies before the husband, the purchaser of her ketubah gets nothing. So of course the children are going to get the bun indifferent because the husband is going to inherit her, and he's going to take all of those assets, and he's already made the commitment that his children with her will inherit the property that she brought into the marriage. So there is no need for the children to go to some third party. The situation where you might have them needing to go to a third party is where the husband dies first. And you're right. If the husband dies first, then the whoever purchased the ketubah from her has already purchased all of those assets. And you're 100% right. Those children are not going to get the bun indifferent ksuba. And the reason that they don't get it is because the husband died before the wife. The bun indifferent ksuba is only applicable if the wife dies first. And when the wife dies first, the purchaser of the ksuba gets nothing, the husband gets everything, and so the husband's commitment to still give the children of the first of that wife the assets that she brought in remains.
But she's already sold it to somebody else.
No, but she sold a contingent right. The contingent, and it's contingent on her not being the first to die. If she's the first to die, the buyer gets zilch, nada, nothing. It's as if he bought an insurance contract, he bought a futures contract, and it didn't pay off. Right? He bought a contingent right. The contingency didn't come about. The contingency that he bought, that his purchase is conditioned on, is the husband dying first or the husband divorcing the wife. Unless you have one of those two things, the buyer gets zilch. The buyer gets nothing. And so here, the wife died first, the buyer gets nothing. And so as a result, the obligation that the father has remains. It's still an obligation on the child. All right, let's finish up. So lema takanas usha tanaihi. Let's say that maybe takanas usha is a machlokas tanaim. Dahani chada, because we have the following: of de malog yotzin b'shein v'ayin leisha of alo ish, that if you have a servant that came in with the wife and is nichse malog, so the husband gets the right to the benefits, but the wife owns the underlying slave, then if the wife damages the slave and causes the tooth to go out or an eye get poked out, then the slave goes free. But not if the husband does so, because the husband only has the fruit rights. Vitanya idach, but there's another brisa, lola ish velola isha. Neither the husband nor the wife has a right. So svarua dekule alma kinyan paraslavka kinyan adgufdami, and it seems like everybody's agreeing that owning the rights to the fruit is not like owning anything, because both of these brises do not say that the man poking the eye out or knocking out the tooth causes the slave to go free. And so my lav b'hakamivli. So let's say that this is what they disagree about. Demand to Amr Leisha, the one who says that if it goes out, if the wife does the damage, lays like Takanas Usha. That opinion doesn't hold to Takanas Usha, because remember, Takanas Usha says that if a wife sells nichse malog, it goes back to the husband after she passes. So Uman to Amr lo isha islay Takanas Usha. But the one who says that neither the husband nor the wife can cause the slave to go free, they hold the Takanas Usha, because the Takanas Usha says that even if she tries to sell the slave, it goes back to the husband. Lo, no, that's not the answer. The kuli alma islahu Takanas Usha. Really, everybody holds up Takanas Usha. Ela kan kodem takana, kan la'achar takana. One brisa is talking about before they made the takana. The other brisa is after they made the takana. The ibayasema, or alternatively, we can say a second possible answer. Both of them are after the enactment. The islahu takanas usha, and they both say that there was a takanas usha. My time. Why is the one who says that the wife can cause the slave to go free? Kidarava, the amarava, as we turn to Tzaddik Amin Aleph, the hektish chametz v'shikram apkian mided shibud, that there is a lien on this that the husband has as a result of the sale. And that lien gets demolished when you free a slave, because that's one of the three situations. If you consecrate something, if it turns into chametz on Pesach, or if it becomes a free slave, all three will undermine the release of a lien. And so lema de Rava Tanai, who? So are you telling me that Rava is actually, there's a machlokas Tanaim about Rava's statement? Whoa, no, dekuli alma islahu de Rava. Everybody agrees with Rava. Bahacha almuha rabbanan l'shibuda debal, that according to the opinion that says that neither the woman nor the husband can cause the slave to go free, we're treating that freedom just like a sale. That just as a wife, if she sells nichse malog, it goes back to the husband if she dies first. So too, if the wife pokes out the eye of the slave doesn't go free, because of Takanas Usha allowing the husband to retain the slave. So we've now answered two, but you know what? We have a third answer to how we can understand these two brisas. But for that answer, you'll need to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Have a great day. Look forward to continuing our learning together.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.